the Clinton campaign are just exhausting some days, right? A couple weeks ago, we learned about an avalanche of emails that made the first direct connection between access granted to the State Department and to major foreign donors of the Clinton Foundation. We learned that this last week that 85 of 154 meetings that the Secretary of State granted when she was Secretary of State were to major contributors to the Clinton Foundation. And the Clintons answered all of this avalanche of controversies and conflict of interest is just saying that if she's elected President of the United States, they will fundraising from foreign donors and corporations to the Clinton Foundation because it would be a conflict of interest. But I got to tell you, I'm from south of Highway 40, but I'm just trying to keep current here. So if it'd be a conflict of interest if she was President of the United States to take money from foreign donors, how was it not a conflict of interest when she was Secretary of State of the United States of America? Am I right? I mean, the American people are tired of pay-to-play politics in Washington, D.C., and it's exactly the kind of politics that Donald Trump is going to bring to a crashing halt the day that he becomes President of the United States. So let me say, for the sake of preserving the highest standards of integrity in the highest office in the land, let's decide here and now in Georgia that Hillary Clinton will never be elected President of the United States of America. When Donald Trump becomes President of the United States, the days of a rigged system that benefits the favored few are over. Donald Trump's only special interest as president will be you, the American people, and he'll fight for you every single day. Now, despite the avalanche of controversies coming out of this administration, it's not even the worst of it. I mean, the truth is 7.5 years of leadership by Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton has weakened America's place in the world and stifled our nation's economy. I mean, you look at the result of the foreign policy of this administration, and it's truly extraordinary. If you took a picture of a map of the wider Middle East in 2009 and you looked at it again today, you almost couldn't recognize it. Literally, it appears that parts of the world are spinning apart. Terrorist attacks at home and abroad, grim and heartbreaking scenes among our allies, and inspired attacks here at home. History teaches us that weakness arouses evil. And I would submit to you that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's foreign policy of leading from behind, moving red lines, feigning resets with Russia, and paying ransom to terrorist-sponsoring states has emboldened our enemies and endangered America and our allies. Let me make a promise to you. When Donald Trump becomes President of the United States, we won't be paying ransom to terrorist-sponsoring states or terrorist organizations. They'll be paying a price if they threaten the American people or detain or harm the people of this nation. Hillary Clinton's record on foreign affairs is extraordinary. It was Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama who precipitously withdrew American forces from Iraq after stability had been achieved by 2009. The rapid and reckless withdrawal of our troops without renegotiating a status of forces agreement resulted in a vacuum in which ISIS was able to literally be conjured up out of the sand to compromise vast areas hard won by the American soldier. It was Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State that actually initiated that disastrous agreement with the radical mullahs in Iran. And perhaps most notably at all, it was Hillary Clinton and her State Department, who left Americans in harm's way in Benghazi, and then after 4 Americans fell, said before the Senate, "What difference at this point does it make?" Well, let me tell you, as the proud father of a United States Marine, I say this: anyone who said that, anyone who did that, should be disqualified from ever serving as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States of America. But the record abroad is only half the story. The record here at home of this last administration and the policies of this administration that Hillary Clinton's committed to continuing is just as bad. We find ourselves in this country today in the weakest economic recovery since the Great Depression. It was just last week we learned that the paltry numbers of growth in the last quarter were actually rounded down by officials in Washington, D.C. to, I think, 1.1%. We have the lowest labor participation rate since the 1970s, and most heartbreaking of all, nearly 7 million more Americans find themselves living in poverty today than the day that Barack Obama became president of the United States. Hillary Clinton's plan is more of the same. More taxes, more regulation, more Obamacare, and more of the same policies on energy that have stifled American growth. It truly is extraordinary. When asked how she was going to pay for more than $1 trillion in spending, beyond the $1 trillion in tax increases she's advocated, Hillary Clinton said, "I'm going to tell you how we're going to pay for it. We're going to go where the money is. We're going to go after the super wealthy. We're going to go after corporations. We're going to go after Wall Street," close quote. Well, you know, the only problem with that is, as Margaret Thatcher said years ago, the only problem with socialism is you eventually run out of other people's money. You know, they tell us this economy is the best that we can do. They paint a rosy picture about how things in America are really as good as they're going to get. But you and I know better. It's not the best that we can do. It's just the best they can do. And when Donald Trump becomes president of the United States of America, we're going to cut taxes, reduce regulation, repeal Obamacare, and end the war on coal and get this economy moving for every American in every city, large and small, across this country. Donald Trump has a plan. It's a plan to reignite the American economy based on time-honored solutions and principles of less taxes, less government intrusion, more American energy, and smarter and tougher trade deals. When Donald Trump becomes president of the United States, we're going to work with members of Congress, like your great senators, Senator Perdue and Senator Isaacson, and we're going to cut taxes across the board for every American. We're going to end death taxes once and for all, and we're going to lower the corporate tax in this country so businesses in Georgia can compete with businesses around the world to keep jobs here in the great state of Georgia. We're going to roll our sleeves up, and on day one, Donald Trump will sign an executive order, not creating new regulations, but establishing a moratorium on any new federal red tape, and he's going to repeal every executive order of the Obama administration that's stifling growth and jobs. Donald Trump's going to roll his sleeves up. He's going to roll his sleeves up and bring that great negotiating ability, that broad-shouldered business mind to bear on making sure that trade agreements work for the American worker. We're going to renegotiate NAFTA, and we're going to hold all of our trading partners accountable so that the American worker is the real winner when it comes to international trade. And lastly, we're going to end the war on coal once and for all, and we're going to unleash the power of the American economy in the resources of our land. Now, there's a lot of economists that look at this strategy of less taxes, less regulation, more American energy, smarter and tougher trade deals, and they're talking about some real growth. Donald Trump speaks with that boundless optimism about how quickly the American economy will spring back. Now, Hillary Clinton is a little skeptical. She said that the predictions about an economic recovery under a Trump administration were, quote, wildly unrealistic. That's what she said. Well, Donald Trump and I know the only thing that's wildly unrealistic is electing the same people with the same bad ideas and expecting a different result. The last thing I want to mention to you before I get to your questions is very simply one other thing I want to remind you of. And while this is an issue about standards in the highest office in the land. This election's about that. This election's about America's place in the world and the strength of our economy. Remember this as you talk to your neighbors and friends here in Georgia. We're going to be electing a president for the next 4 years, but that president is likely going to set the course of the Supreme Court of the United States for the next 40 years. And we better think about that. We better think about that real hard. Those of us who cherish the Constitution of the United States, those of us who cherish the God-given liberties that are enshrined there, ought to think hard about it. I mean, elect Hillary Clinton, and you better get used to more unelected judges using unaccountable power to make unconstitutional actions. I want to promise you, Donald Trump is committed to appointing men and women to the Supreme Court of the United States who will strictly interpret and construe the Constitution of the United States of America in the tradition of Justice Antonin Scalia. Not legislating from the bench, but upholding our Constitution. So let me say this, for the sake of the rule of law, for the sake of the sanctity of life, for the sake of the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America, for the sake of all of our God-given liberties enshrined in our founding documents, Georgia, we need to decide here and now today that the next president to make appointments to the Supreme Court of the United States will be President Donald Trump. You know, as I close, let me remind you that I hope you'll leave here today, and I hope you'll tell somebody. You know, you think about this great former governor, Sonny Perdue, who made history back in 2002 in the great state of Georgia. And the governor and I were just talking about it. Back in the day when he and Mary were out there campaigning, they said, "You can't win in Georgia. That's not going to happen." Well, all the establishment, I'm told, here in Georgia was kind of telling them, we don't elect Republican governors in this state, right? Even some Republicans said that, I'm told. But Sonny Perdue took his message directly to the people of Georgia and changed the destiny of this state and its prosperity ever since. And the difference was that he took his message straight to the people. And I guess that's my message to you today more than anything else is I hope you'll leave here today, and I hope to say hello to as many of you personally as I can before we whisk our way up to Atlanta. But somebody's here from Atlanta. But I want to tell you, I hope you leave here today with a burden on your heart to go tell somebody. If something that I've said here has maybe reminded you of something that you already knew, maybe it's one of the reasons why you're wearing that red cap today, go out and tell somebody. Because I'm absolutely convinced that all the TV shows in the world, all the front pages of newspapers, all the internet stories and radio shows and tweets in the world don't matter a thimble compared to the difference that you can make with somebody who knows you at work or worship or in your neighborhood, who trusts you and respects you. So I want you to go and tell them. Tell them about this choice. It's change versus the status quo. It's about staying on a path of more of the failed policies that have weakened America's place in the world and stifled our economy. It's about upholding the Constitution of the United States, but it's about more than all of that. It's about really reviving the American